Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The trash bag hit the mattress and bounced once. "Choose," she said, breath steady, eyes locked. I grabbed the bed frame to stop my hands from shaking. The bag rustled like a dare I couldn't dodge. "I'm Daniel, 35, old enough to know better." She set a second bag beside the first and waited. I could feel the line she drew under my feet. Step wrong and the floor would open. Her phone lit up on the dresser, 30 minutes. No speech, no pep talk, just a countdown in air. I tried to speak and swallowed the attempt hard. Silence sat between us like a referee with teeth. She nodded at the closet and folded her arms. I pulled the door and it stuck halfway and squealed. The noise made her flinch like it proved something. I pushed harder and the hinge snapped forward. A smell of dust gusted out and hit my mouth. Not memory, not poetry, just stale and heavy. I stepped back and wiped my face with my wrist. Maya lined in like she smelled excuses. "Pick a pile, keep or gone," her voice had edges. She pointed with 2 fingers and didn't blink once. I saw the choice, not the history, and it stung. My heart kicked because I knew she meant it. I reached for the first box and stopped short. My throat burned and my palm hovered like it feared heat. Maya exhaled through her nose and looked at the timer. 28 minutes ticked down like a fuse. "I'm here," I said, and the words felt thin. She lifted one shoulder and didn't answer at all. Her ring tapped the dresser, one sharp click, then another. The clicks landed like verdicts I couldn't appeal. I slid the box to the floor and sat on the edge. My knee bounced so fast the mattress shivered. She steadied it with her palm and held my gaze. The touch felt kind and loaded, and I froze. "I can't carry this house with you forever." Her jaw tightened and her eyes didn't soften. She wasn't angry, she was reaching her cliff. I saw the drop and it scared me. I stood and opened the box without looking down. The room shrank to breath and timer and pressure. I lifted the top layer, then placed it aside carefully. Maya shifted closer and watched my face instead. "You don't have to throw away your past," she said. "You have to choose the present." Her throat worked. The words were simple and they landed like weight. Something in me tipped toward movement. I took a picture frame out and kept my gaze high. No inventory, no tour, just a frame and tremor. I wrapped it in a towel and set it aside. Maya's shoulders loosened a fraction, then squared again. "Keep one box," she said, then paused a beat. "Only what you can explain without crying later." It was cruel and kind in the same breath. I knew why and it punched me breathless. The timer chirped and she silenced it with a thumb. New number flashed, 20 minutes, and my chest lurched. She wasn't bluffing and I couldn't stall anymore. I felt the first choice become real. Footsteps thudded in the hall, my brother's timing instinct. His text buzzed her phone and lit the screen hard. She turned it toward me with a raised eyebrow. He wrote, "Push him or he'll drown." Heat climbed my neck and I wanted to throw the phone. Instead, I nodded once because he wasn't wrong. The word "drown" scraped across an old scar. I tasted metal and decided to move. I built 2 piles on the bed, small and smaller. Maya tracked each move with quiet concentration. Our breaths synced like a truce we didn't trust. Every item raised a question I hadn't voiced. I cut my finger on a corner and sucked the blood. Red spotted the sheet and she reached for a tissue. Her hand shook and then steadied on my wrist. The shake told me more than any speech. "You're not replacing her," she said, very controlled. "You're choosing a life without ghosts." The words stuck. I nodded once because the truth came clean. I could live with Klein even if it burned. I wrapped one thing and fed another to the bag. The plastic swallowed sound and made room for breath. Maya stepped back and let me keep the rhythm. I kept going because stopping meant losing her. The box grew lighter and the bag grew heavier. My shoulders loosened in small clicks I could feel. The closet gaped like a wound that wanted air. I stood in front of it and didn't flinch. Maya checked the timer, 10 minutes and change. She didn't warn me, she didn't push again. We both watched the numbers fall like snow. I hated the softness of that image and moved. I chose 3 things for the keep pile and stopped. That number felt strict and honest, no cheat. She noticed and her mouth softened around nothing. I held her eyes and let the choice stand. The last minute crawled slow and mean and necessary. I tied the bag and felt the knot bite. Maya opened the door and looked at the hallway. I lifted the bag and felt the house lean. I hauled the sack to the hallway and nearly dropped it. Maya planted her foot and steadied the load with one hand. Outside, she said, short and precise like a court order. I nodded and felt my pulse hammer for a reason I knew. We took the stairs fast and quiet like we might wake something. The chute door stuck and I drove my shoulder into the plate. Metal shrieked and the bag slid down with a gulp. I stood there listening for the thud that never came. Next one, she didn't touch me this time. I climbed back up and counted each step like a penance. My legs wobbled at the landing and heat climbed my neck. I pushed through because stopping meant a different loss. At the bedroom threshold, she blocked me with her palm. "Limit stays," she said, and tapped 3 fingers in the air. I heard my own breath break as if it wanted out. The number burned, but it kept me honest. Her phone buzzed against the dresser and lit the glass. She checked the screen and lifted an eyebrow at me. "Your brother's downstairs," she said, voice flat but careful. The elevator dinged like a warning we both expected. He walked in without ceremony and scanned the mess once. "Working or drowning?" he asked and leaned on the door. I bent to lift another sack and left him unanswered. He moved aside, which counted as mercy today. Maya flicked her gaze between us like a coach mid-game. "Boundaries," she said and pointed at the hall. He saluted, half teasing, half serious, then backed out. Even he knew the stakes had teeth here. I knelt and wrapped one thing with a towel fast. My throat tightened and my eyes threatened revolt. Maya touched my shoulder and kept the pressure steady. "Name why it stays," she said, and waited. "Because it anchors me," I said, and my lip trembled. "Because it reminds me to breathe when nights collapse." She listened, then nodded once like she could work with that. "Then it earns space," she said, and stepped back. The doorbell rang twice like a drum roll I hated. Our neighbor peered in and raised both hands apologetically. "Garbage pickup changed," she said, and held a flyer. "Tonight is final haul or fine start." Maya took the paper and looked up sharply at me. "This helps," she murmured almost to herself, eyes hard. A deadline with teeth tightened every muscle I own. We didn't thank the neighbor, we moved faster. I filled another sack and dragged it to the hall. My brother shadowed me to the elevator in silence. He pressed the button and stared at the numbers climbing. "You sure about therapy?" he asked, not really asking. "Yes," I said, and the word tasted like iron. "Tomorrow morning," my jaw locked until it hurt. He blew out a breath and handed me a bandage. "Then blade less tonight," he muttered and stepped away. Back inside, Maya held up her open palm for pause. She pointed at the last half-full box near the bed. "Decide now," she said, not unkind, not soft either. "Everything after that goes downstairs." I closed my eyes for one beat and opened them. I kept 2 letters and 1 photo and nothing else. Maya lifted the sack mouth and I fed it slow. We tied the knot together and didn't speak. She cleared her throat and rolled her shoulders once. "I booked a couples consult for next week," she said. "We can cancel if this turns performative." I met her eyes and felt the floor steady a little. The elevator doors opened again like a consequence. We carried 2 sacks between us and didn't stumble. My brother held the gate for us without commentary. We made 3 trips and no one argued the pace. On the last run, I paused at the doorframe mid-step. Something inside me pushed for a reckless retreat. Maya noticed and placed her hand on my back. "Forward," she whispered, and I believed her for once. At the chute, I hesitated with the final weight. I thought about what tomorrow might require from me. The bag slipped from my grip and vanished clean. My hands shook and I let them shake. We stood in the empty hall and listened for noise. Footsteps above, a door slammed below, a distant laugh. Nothing inside the apartment called my name anymore. That silence scared me and freed me in the same breath. Back in the bedroom, the space felt usable and dangerous. Maya crossed to the window and braced both arms on the ledge. "I want you," she said, and her voice almost cracked. "I refuse to date grief more than I date you." I stepped beside her and we looked out without speaking. The city moved on like it always does when you suffer. I did not resent that motion, I needed its push. She slid her fingers between mine and didn't let go. My phone lit with an unknown number and kept buzzing. I stared at it until the call died on its own. A text followed with a single line that chilled me. "Tomorrow executor meeting, bring identification and courage." Maya read over my shoulder and drew in a breath. "This is the real wave," she said, steady but pale. "Say yes to the meeting now." I typed yes and felt the next chapter pull hard. I pushed open the conference room door and the clock jumped. The executor already sent. Ood hand out, tie loosened. Maya slid into the chair beside me without a word. A folder waited at my place like a test I might fail. "Identification first." He tapped the table and watched closely. I laid out my wallet and tried not to shake. Maya's knee bumped mine once, then went still. The copier hummed like a warning I couldn't ignore. He placed the folder between us and flipped it once. "Final disbursements, 1 addendum delivered today." He pulled a sealed envelope from the inside pocket. "Her instruction, time sensitive, you should read it now." I stared at the seal and felt my tongue go dry. Maya's hand hovered near my wrist and then withdrew. "Open it," she said, eyes on the envelope, not me. I broke the seal and braced for impact I couldn't predict. 4 lines in and my throat closed hard. She wrote like she still knew my habits and shortcuts. "Keep the love, release the rest, donate the remainder today." One signature at the bottom made my ribs press in. Maya cleared her throat like she had been holding breath. "Donation today solves our argument," she whispered, careful and firm. The executor lifted his chin and pointed at a second sheet. "Storage unit on file, access code expires at midnight." Something cold settled just below my collarbone and stayed. I hadn't told Maya about the unit, not once. Her jaw tightened and she finally looked at me. "What else is there?" she asked, voice very controlled. "Nothing dangerous," I managed, too fast and too defensive. "Then we clear it now." She pushed the folder toward me. The executor slid a form and uncapped a pen. "Authorize release for donation. Witness required. I can witness." I read the block letters twice and forced my shoulders down. The pen felt heavy as I dragged it across the line. Maya leaned back, face unreadable, fingers laced tight. The executor stamped the page and checked his watch. "Unit closes early today. Staffing issue. You need to hurry." He set keys on the table and looked at Maya. "Only registered names can enter without you." She nodded once and stood before I did. The elevator jolted and my stomach went with it. Maya didn't speak until the doors opened on the lobby. "You hid the unit," she said, flat as concrete. "I didn't want to drown you," I answered, hearing the old reflex. "That reflex is the problem," she replied, stepping into the street. "Today we act clean, no shadows, no edits." A rideshare brake squealed as it pulled to the curb. We got in and the driver read the destination off the screen. Blocks slid past and I kept my eyes on the meter. Maya watched my reflection and waited for me to choose. I will hand over everything except 3 items, I said. 3 I can justify out loud, no hiding, no panic. She nodded once, not satisfied, not furious either. That rule saved us last night, she said, almost gentle. It saves us now. She looked forward and folded her arms. I exhaled slowly and tried not to count the minutes. We reached the gates and punched the code in twice. A buzzer screamed, then clicked, then finally allowed us through. The corridor stretched long and narrow and unforgiving. My throat tasted metallic and my palms started to burn. At the unit, my hand hovered over the padlock. Maya stood to the side and held her ground. Before we open this, tell me the worst, she said. The worst is it still owns me, I answered, feeling the wince. I turned the key and the door rattled up. I didn't give a tour, I focused on one task. We would choose 3 and free the rest without theater. I stepped inside and forced my lungs to keep pace. Maya touched my shoulder once and then withdrew again. Say the reason out loud for each keep, she said. If you can't speak, it doesn't stay. Her rule felt brutal and necessary, which meant it was right. I picked the first keeper and spoke clearly and short. Compassion for myself, not nostalgia, earned that choice. Maya listened and nodded once like a referee calling fair. No celebration, no comfort, just the next task waiting. My phone vibrated hard in my pocket and wouldn't stop. I pulled it out and saw my brother's name flashing. I ignored it and kept working because we had a clock. The buzzing returned and crawled up my spine. Maya held out her hand for the phone without comment. She read the text and showed me the screen. He wrote, "Remember the bill due today or your account freezes." My chest tightened. I had forgotten. Of course I had. We split, Maya said, already moving down the corridor. You clear, I call the bank and settle it. I wanted to protest and hold control together. I handed her the card because control had already cracked. She disappeared around the corner with decisive steps. I felt the air shift and the unit grow larger. Alone with decisions, I took the second keeper and spoke. This one represented change, not memory, and I believed myself. A shadow crossed the entrance and I bristled on. Instinct. The facility manager paused and checked his clipboard once. Donation truck in 20, you need boxes prepped. I nodded, throat dry again, and waved him on. Time compressed into quick motions and short breaths. I lined items for pickup and didn't look back. Each small surrender punched through a stubborn layer. I kept moving because stopping would rewrite the day. Maya returned with a tight smile and a small nod. Account safe, fee waived, you owe me dinner, she said. Focus here, truck is coming fast. She set her phone to a fresh timer and hit start. 3 keepers, I announced, and I held them up. Reason spoken, no lies, no spin. She examined my face more than my hands. All right, she said softly, and the room tilted toward possible. The cartwheels squealed as we loaded donation piles. Sweat ran into my eyes and stung hard. I blinked it away and kept the pace urgent. Maya matched me and didn't miss a beat. The truck backed in with a sharp hiss and a clatter. The driver jumped down and scanned our paperwork quickly. Everything on this side, he pointed, already lifting. We moved together without argument, and it felt new. With the last load gone, the unit looked shockingly simple. My chest hurt in a way that felt clean and raw. Maya leaned against the frame and wiped her brow with her sleeve. We're not done, she said, and I knew what she meant. She watched me lock the door again with steady hands. No more secret spaces, she added, eyes never leaving mine. I pocketed the key and nodded once, slow and real. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, and my heart finally caught up. The therapist opened the door and called my name. Maya stood before I did and reached for my wrist. I let her guide me because walking away would be lying. We sat and the chair hissed like it disliked me already. Ground rule, the therapist said, palms flat on her notebook. No speeches, say what you want and act on it. Maya uncrossed her arms and looked at me without blinking. I swallowed and chose not to stall again. I want us, I said, and my voice scraped. I want to stop negotiating with absence. Maya's throat moved and her eyes didn't leave mine. The therapist nodded once, then leaned a little forward. Then choose a ritual that proves it by tonight, she said. Something simple, repeatable, and public. Maya's foot tapped once against the rug like a metronome. My phone buzzed hard in my pocket and ruined the rhythm. I checked the screen and felt heat rise fast. Storage sent a message with a bold subject line. Appraiser on site discovered restricted documents and halted transfer. Permission required in person within 3 hours, or everything returns. Maya reached for the phone and her jaw tightened. This is the last echo from that place, she said. She looked at the therapist and lifted her chin slightly. Can we count a decisive errand as today's ritual? The therapist considered, then gave a single measured nod. If he leads and explains choices out loud, she said. No blame, no hedging, keep it factual. Maya pointed at the door like a coach, sending me in. We hustled to the elevator and stood too close. I hit the lobby button and stared at my shoes. Do you want company or space? She asked, barely above a whisper. Company, I answered, because silence would eat me alive. In the rideshare, I dialed the manager and introduced myself. He confirmed a hold and asked for identification on arrival. Also, 2 sealed packets triggered a compliance flag, he added. Open them here with a witness or take them unopened. Maya held out her palm for the phone and listened. She mouthed breathe at me and squeezed my knee once. Witness there is fine, she told him and ended the call. Her fingers stayed where they were and steadied the shaking. We checked in at the desk and signed 2 forms. The manager led us down a corridor that echoed. He paused at a bay door and held up a key. Open the envelopes here so I can log it clean. I nodded and reached for the first one slowly. The seal gave with a soft tear that felt loud. Inside was a short letter and a clean directive. Donate these to the hospice library, effective immediately, no monetizing. Maya exhaled like pressure bled out of the room. Easy, she said, and she gathered the slip for a photo. The manager wrote down the instruction with neat block letters. He stamped the receipt and gestured to the second envelope. My hands didn't obey at first, then they did. This seal fought back and I had to tear twice. A single sheet dropped into my palm like a verdict. Executor meeting follow-up tomorrow, private account reconciliation mandatory. Bring keys. Maya looked at the page and then at me. This changes tomorrow, she said, not accusing, just precise. It means more disclosure today, so nothing surprises us. I felt a flash of panic and let it pass. We signed the release and moved the flagged box aside. The manager locked it in a cage and handed me a slip. Courier will take this to the hospice in 2 hours. Everything else moves to the truck right now. I pushed the cart toward the loading area without hesitating. Maya walked beside me and didn't talk at all. We checked each container against the list with quick motions. The driver scanned barcodes and waved us forward with urgency. When the final crate left the floor, I felt lighter. Not cured, not heroic, just less clenched than before. Maya stepped close and rested her forehead against mine. We're building a new muscle, she whispered, and I believed her. Back on the sidewalk, my phone buzzed again insistently. A new text glowed from an unknown number with a short line. Stop clearing things until we speak. I represent a claimant. Maya read over my shoulder and kept her voice level. Do not engage yet, she said, and put her hand out. Forward to the executor and ask for verification. I hit send and watched the dots bounce and stall. This would not be the last surprise, and we both knew it. We walked to a cafe and sat at a corner table. Maya pulled up the therapist's message with the daily ritual. "Public act by tonight," she read and set the phone down. I stared at the street and felt an idea take shape. "I will call the hospice and read the directive aloud," I said. "I will confirm delivery and donate in our names." Maya's eyes softened in a way that hurt and helped. "That counts," she said, but her shoulders stayed tense. I stepped outside and placed the call with trembling fingers. The coordinator answered on the second ring with brisk energy. I read the instruction clearly and requested a receipt posted. She agreed and promised to email confirmation within the hour. I rejoined Maya and tried to breathe evenly. She slid a glass of water toward me and watched my face. "Ritual complete," she said, then pointed to my chest. "Now tell me what tomorrow's message stirs up." "Fear of audits," I answered, because truth worked today. "Fear of finding one more locked door I forgot existed." She didn't flinch, which helped more than comfort would. "Then we open them before they open us," she replied. We left the table and headed home in a focused silence. My phone chimed again with the hospice confirmation arriving early. Maya smiled with her eyes and bumped my shoulder lightly. The moment felt earned, and the next test already waited. The lobby buzzer rasped and the security gate slid open. A woman in a sharp suit blocked our path with a folder. "I'm the claimant's representative," she said, voice cool and clipped. "Do not dispose of anything else until we review contents." Her card landed in my palm and felt like a summons. Maya angled her body between us and lifted her chin. "We verify authority through the executor only." The woman smiled without warmth and motioned to the elevators. We rode up together in a silence that felt dangerous. My throat worked while I rehearsed not hiding anything. When the doors parted, the executor stood waiting with files. "Everyone inside," he said, gaze hard on me. At the table, the attorney opened a thin packet crisply. "Client alleges an undelivered bequest stored under your control." She slid a printout across and tapped a highlighted line. "Digital cash referenced here. Location unknown. Produce access immediately." Maya's fingers found my sleeve and pressed a warning. I inhaled once and stared at the accusation dead on. "There is a cloud archive tied to our old provider," I said. "Not secret now, I am granting access in this room." The executor pushed a consent form toward me and waited. I signed cleanly and handed over the two-factor device. The code arrived and the paralegal started downloading logs. Maya watched my face instead of the screen, which steadied me. "Next," the attorney said, eyes tracking the progress bar. "Bank reconciliation and account closure must proceed today." The executor nodded and lifted another envelope like a hammer. "Appointment confirmed in 30 minutes, branch across the street." We walked fast, no one speaking, traffic roaring like pressure. At the desk, the manager greeted us with polished efficiency. "Final reconciliation requires dual approval and immediate direction." He placed two options on a tablet and gestured to sign. Option 1 moved the remainder into my name alone. Option 2 directed funds to the hospice per standing instruction. Maya's jaw tightened and her eyes bored into mine. I felt the pull of old habits and chose the second. The manager recorded the decision and printed a receipt. "Confirmation will arrive shortly with closing balance," he said. The attorney checked her watch and studied my posture. "This narrows my client's concern, but not entirely." Back in the conference room, the download finished with a chime. The paralegal sorted files fast and flagged a single item. A letter addressed to me, time-stamped months after diagnosis. The attorney requested to read it into the record now. I looked at Maya and found zero panic in her stare. "Open it here," she murmured, resting her hand on the table. I nodded and let the executor break the digital seal. He read aloud 3 spare lines and then stopped. Keep one object that proves I lived beside you fully. Not a shrine, a compass. If you cannot choose, decline me. The room blurred for a second and then sharpened. Maya exhaled slowly and rubbed her thumb across her wrist. The attorney scribbled and then closed her folder briskly. My client's claim focused on undisclosed storage, she said. With the archive produced and funds redirected, we withdraw for now. She stood, but her eyes promised future scrutiny. The door clicked behind her and the room felt smaller. The executor folded his hands and waited for my move. I will document the 3 keepers and register locations, I said. No more hidden spaces, written audit, shared passwords. Meyer absorbed that like medicine and gave one tight nod. Then we finish the ritual tonight, she answered, voice steady. Public, simple, visible, no private vows. Her certainty braced me more than any apology. My phone buzzed with the hospice receipt landing fast. I slid it across the table as proof of action. The executor scanned it and filed the copies away. Estate obligations are complete pending final audit, he said. We stepped into the elevator and the doors started to close. A hand shot through and my brother squeezed inside, breathless. He looked at me, then at Maya, then at our joined grip. Mom wants answers about the purge, he blurted, eyes worried. Tonight, I said, keeping my gaze locked on him. Open house, nothing hidden, questions allowed. Maya gave a small approving tilt of her head. My brother nodded once, but tension hung in the car. On the sidewalk, the sky threatened rain we could smell. Maya waited for traffic and then took my hand deliberately. One more step, she said, eyes on the crosswalk signal. We go home and show the empty spaces on purpose. The signal switched and we moved as one through the crowd. I felt grief pacing behind me like a tired rival. I didn't run from it this time, I set the pace. Something ahead shifted, tonight would test what we just built. I unlocked the door and my family filed in fast. My brother scanned the rooms and nodded once like a scout. My mother crossed her arms and aimed at the bedroom. Maya squeezed my hand and let go like a signal. Show me what's left, my mother's voice cut straight through. I led them to the cleared spaces and kept breathing slow. Maya stood beside the closet like a guard without armor. I opened the door and let the emptiness speak. This wasn't cruelty, I said, pulse loud and stubborn. It was survival. We kept 3 and logged them. My mother's eyes flashed, then softened at the word logged. Where, she asked, not moving, not blinking. Visible only, I answered and pointed to the shelf. 1 marker, 2 letters, reasons documented and shared. She stepped closer and almost reached out, then stopped. Her fingers hovered like a question she feared to ask. Are you replacing devotion with rules? She asked carefully. Maya shifted her weight and watched both of us closely. I'm replacing secrecy with structure, I said, voice steady. I'm keeping love, not a museum. The room held its breath. The buzzer rattled again and a new visitor appeared. Our neighbor poked in with a stiff smile and a tablet. Board posted a notice about bulk disposal compliance, she announced. You're clear, but someone lodged a complaint anonymously. My mother shot my brother a look that said behave. Maya accepted the notice and thanked the neighbor quickly. We hosted this walkthrough to avoid rumors, she added plainly. Anyone who wonders can ask us directly. My phone vibrated with a reply from the executor. Claimant withdrawn for now, audit scheduled next week. I read it aloud and laid the phone on the table. My mother exhaled and finally let her shoulders drop. Then I want one promise, she said, eyes bright and stern. No more hidden compartments, no late surprises, tell me early. I've already given Maya every password, I answered without flinching. You can have read-only access tonight, her mouth trembled, then held. We moved to the living room and faced the last task. Ritual, the therapist had called it, public and repeatable. Maya pulled out a marker and a clean page. "House rules," she said, and handed me the pen. I wrote slowly while everyone watched my hand. One keeper per person, reasons spoken aloud. Monthly check-in over dinner. Therapy continues until we cancel together. Emergency calls allowed if grief ambushes. Silence not allowed. Maya took the pen and added one final line. "We do not weaponize memories," she underlined it once. My brother cleared his throat and bumped my shoulder lightly. "That one saves holidays," he muttered, almost smiling. My mother approached the shelf and studied the marker item. She lifted it, then placed it back with deliberate care. "You picked something that points forward," she murmured, almost proud. I felt my jaw loosen for the first time today. The neighbor reappeared with 2 folding chairs and a grin. "Open house needs seating," she said, parking them neatly. We laughed, which shocked me and didn't break anything. Lightness stayed, cautious but real. Maya set a timer on the counter and faced me. "Last piece," she said, chin raised, hands open. "Delete the old cloud links while everyone witnesses." I opened the account page and stared at the final button. My finger hovered and heat climbed the back of my neck. I pictured the nights that made those files feel necessary. I pictured tomorrow and the audits and the new rules. I pressed delete and said goodbye out loud. My mother covered her mouth and then lowered her hand. My brother slapped my back once and stepped aside. Maya watched my face, not the screen, and nodded slowly. I felt the tension leave like air from a valve. We signed the house rules and taped them on the fridge. My mother took a photo and tucked her phone away. "Dinner next week," she said, tone firm, eyes soft. "Bring stories that are living, leave the rest." The elevator dinged and the crowd thinned on its own. My brother lingered and pointed at the door quietly. "Trash night again," he said, almost teasing, almost kind. "We can take the last bag together." We carried it down the hallway without ceremony or commentary. At the chute, he held the door and I did the drop. The fall sounded final and strangely gentle to me. He squeezed my shoulder and walked back without talking. I returned to the apartment and found Maya waiting. She leaned on the frame and watched me like a decision. "Ultimatum S over," she said, voice even, eyes wet. "Now it's a choice we keep making." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The space felt bare and useful and newly ours. I took the marker item and set it in the open. We stood there quiet while the compass settled. I unlocked the door and my family filed in fast. My brother scanned the rooms and nodded once like a scout. My mother crossed her arms and aimed at the bedroom. Maya squeezed my hand and let go like a signal. "Show me what's left," my mother's voice cut straight through. I led them to the cleared spaces and kept breathing slow. Maya stood beside the closet like a guard without armor. I opened the door and let the emptiness speak. "This wasn't cruelty," I said, pulse loud and stubborn. "It was survival. We kept 3 and logged them." My mother's eyes flashed, then softened at the word logged. "Where?" she asked, not moving, not blinking. "Visible only," I answered and pointed to the shelf. 1 marker, 2 letters, reasons documented and shared. She stepped closer and almost reached out, then stopped. Her fingers hovered like a question she feared to ask. "Are you replacing devotion with rules?" she asked carefully. Maya shifted her weight and watched both of us closely. "I'm replacing secrecy with structure," I said, voice steady. "I'm keeping love, not a museum." The room held its breath. The buzzer rattled again and a new visitor appeared. Our neighbor poked in with a stiff smile and a tablet. "Board posted a notice about bulk disposal compliance," she announced. "You're clear, but someone lodged a complaint anonymously." My mother shot my brother a look that said behave. Maya accepted the notice and thanked the neighbor quickly. "We hosted this walkthrough to avoid rumors," she added plainly. "Anyone who wonders can ask us directly." My phone vibrated with a reply from the executor. Claimant withdrawn for now, audit scheduled next week. I read it aloud and laid the phone on the table. My mother exhaled and finally let her shoulders drop. Then I want one promise, she said, eyes bright and stern. No more hidden compartments, no late surprises, tell me early. I've already given Maya every password, I answered without flinching. You can have read-only access tonight, her mouth trembled, then held. We moved to the living room and faced the last task. Ritual, the therapist had called it, public and repeatable. Maya pulled out a marker and a clean page. House rules, she said, and handed me the pen. I wrote slowly while everyone watched my hand. One keeper per person, reasons spoken aloud. Monthly check-in over dinner. Therapy continues until we cancel together. Emergency calls allowed if grief ambushes. Silence not allowed. Maya took the pen and added one final line. We do not weaponize memories, she underlined it once. My brother cleared his throat and bumped my shoulder lightly. That one saves holidays, he muttered, almost smiling. My mother approached the shelf and studied the marker item. She lifted it, then placed it back with deliberate care. You picked something that points forward, she murmured, almost proud. I felt my jaw loosen for the first time today. The neighbor reappeared with 2 folding chairs and a grin. Open house needs seating, she said, parking them neatly. We laughed, which shocked me and didn't break anything. Lightness stayed, cautious but real. Maya set a timer on the counter and faced me. Last piece, she said, chin raised, hands open. Delete the old cloud links while everyone witnesses. I opened the account page and stared at the final button. My finger hovered and heat climbed the back of my neck. I pictured the nights that made those files feel necessary. I pictured tomorrow and the audits and the new rules. I pressed delete and said goodbye out loud. My mother covered her mouth and then lowered her hand. My brother slapped my back once and stepped aside. Maya watched my face, not the screen, and nodded slowly. I felt the tension leave like air from a valve. We signed the house rules and taped them on the fridge. My mother took a photo and tucked her phone away. Dinner next week, she said, tone firm, eyes soft. Bring stories that are living, leave the rest. The elevator dinged and the crowd thinned on its own. My brother lingered and pointed at the door quietly. Trash night again, he said, almost teasing, almost kind. We can take the last bag together. We carried it down the hallway without ceremony or commentary. At the chute, he held the door and I did the drop. The fall sounded final and strangely gentle to me. He squeezed my shoulder and walked back without talking. I returned to the apartment and found Maya waiting. She leaned on the frame and watched me like a decision. Ultimatum S over, she said, voice even, eyes wet. Now it's a choice we keep making. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The space felt bare and useful and newly ours. I took the marker item and set it in the open. We stood there quiet while the compass settled.